Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I got this email from Susan Lambert. Subject line, another quote for your spreadsheet. And then in the email, Jared, I don't know if you are still collecting quotes for your spreadsheet regarding the signs of the times being very obvious, but I thought this was applicable. And then she posted an excerpt from a talk by, at the time, presiding Bishop LeGrand Richards. He later went on to become a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, from the April 1951 General Conference. And we're going to read directly from that, so I'm not going to read this right now. And then she says, thanks for your research, Susan Lambert. Well, thank you, Susan. Yes, I'm always collecting quotes for anything. And what she's referring to, if you don't know, I have this main spreadsheet for quotes by topic, A through Z, but I have a few other spreadsheets that collect quotes, but they're for specific purposes. Like this one is quotes, common misconceptions. And it covers all sorts of different misconceptions about the 144,000, New Jerusalem, signs of the times, on and on. And so this one, the misconception is that the signs of the times will be very obvious. Okay. And so this will now be my fifth quote that I have that refutes that. All right, so we're going to read over that. I also have, I'm so glad that I found it and thought about it. I found that quote that people misquote from Boyd K. Packer, where they think that he said that you and your children and your children's children's children won't even be around to see the second coming, so don't even worry about it. That's not what he said. I'm going to show it to you. I've already done a video about it, but it's been a while. I have new people that have subscribed, so we are going to go over that. But it ties in to this talk from LeGrand Richards. Okay, so before we do that, here's the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. It's been a few days, but we've had 4 new people that have joined the challenge. So we are now at 872, and we're trying to get to 1,000. That's the goal. So we're getting really close. Pretty soon we're going to be in 900 territory, and that's going to be exciting. And then 51 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. That's pretty big. The last time that we had anything that big was back on the 23rd and 22nd of January. And before that, you have to go all the way back to the 3rd of January. So it was a big... This update was a big one. We're at a total of 8,105 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. We're trying to get to 10,000. Remember, the goal is to individually share at least 10, but don't stop there. Keep going. If you haven't joined, just share a Book of Mormon. Let me know about it in the comments or send me an email. Make sure to include this at the top left, #flood. The reason why is because when I search the comments, it helps me find your comment. Or if it's an email, put it in the subject line. So good job, everybody. Okay, so for this, we have to go to the Scripture Citation Index because it's not on the church website for General Conference. It only goes back to 1970, 1971, I'm not sure. But this is 1951, April General Conference. Okay, again, LeGrand Richards, at the time, presiding bishop of the church. So we're just going to read a portion of the talk. I wanted to read more than what she shared, although it's just the part that she shared that I put as the quote for this, okay, on the common misconceptions spreadsheet. Okay, visit of young lady. A few weeks ago, a young lady phoned me for an appointment, and when she came to the office, she sat there and cried for a little while. And then she said, I guess I'm jittery. Well, I said, that's all right. Then when she composed herself, she said, Bishop, what is there for the young people today? We have war. They are taking all the boys. It looks like a great war is ahead of us. What do we young people have to live for? I looked at her for a few minutes and I said, have you ever thought of the other side of the story? She said, what side? Well, I said, you remember the story of the 2 buckets that went down in the well? Which I've never heard of this in my life. Let me know if you know what he's talking about. Then he continues, as the one came up, it said, This is surely a cold and dreary world. No matter how many times I come up full, I always have to go down empty. Then the other bucket laughed, and these are talking buckets, and said, "With me, it is different. No matter how many times I go down empty, I always come up full." So here you go. You have a variation on the glass half full, half empty metaphor or lesson. I said, "Have you ever stopped to realize that of all the millions of our Father's children, you're one of the most favored? You are privileged to live in the dispensation of the fullness of times that the prophets of old have looked forward to, when there is more when there is more revealed truth upon the earth than there has ever been in any other dispensation of the world's history, and where we enjoy blessings and comforts of life that kings did not enjoy a few years ago. Have you ever stopped to think of that side of the story?" And I like that. We've kind of been touching on this topic a little bit lately, how you and I, we were sent here at this time to do important things, every single one of us. And I can say that with certainty because there's only about 17 to 18 million members of the church. And so we are in the minority. We are precious and rare and have a lot of value. Every single one. Doesn't matter, what calling you have in the church or priesthood office or anything like that. You're rare. So I like that. Now, before we continue, this part of his talk is what made me think of President Boyd K. Packer's talk. This was back in the October 2011 General Conference called Counsel to Youth. Now, look, okay, so I originally came back to this talk. I think I remember actually watching it and it's stuck in my memory, but not for the reason that some of these other people remember it for. I was talking to somebody a while ago about the second coming, and I guess that they were not too thrilled about thinking about the second coming, or they thought it was silly to talk about it, that it's a waste of time. You know these people. You have them in your life, I'm sure. There's probably some listening right now in the background, and they always ridicule you or make it out as though you're crazy for watching the signs of the times. Well, this person indirectly, I had said some stuff, and then he was like, I always tell the missionaries in the ward whenever they bring up the second coming, I tell them, President Packer said that not even your children's 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 children are going to be around to see the second coming. So elders, don't even think about it. This is what this person said to me. And I was like, I didn't, refute that. I was kind. I didn't start any contention, but I knew that was wrong, that was completely wrong. Well, it seems that the Salt Lake Tribune also interpreted it that way. And if you're not familiar, if you're new to the church, you don't know, you have this kind of rivalry between the Deseret News, which is church owned, and then you have the Salt Lake Tribune, which is not, and it's essentially very antagonistic toward the church. Of course, this is what they heard in his talk. Here's the title: Mormon Apostle Boyd K. Packer, "The End Isn't Near." Okay, so let's look and see what the talk says. Okay, Counsel to Youth. When I was 17, about ready to graduate from high school, as a very average student with some handicaps, as I thought, everything around us came apart one Sunday morning. The next day, we were called to the high school auditorium. On the stage was a chair with a small radio. The principal switched on the radio. When we heard the voice of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as he announced that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, the United States was at war with Japan. Later, that scene was repeated. Again, the voice of President Roosevelt, this time announcing that our country was at war with Germany. World War II had exploded across the world. All at once, our future was uncertain. We did not know what was ahead. Would we live to get married and have a family? Okay. Then he goes on to talk about keeping the commandments and knowing that the Lord will guide you through his spirit and protect you and, read your patriarchal blessing and dress modestly and, advice to youth. Okay. And then he says, by the time we graduated from high school, many of our classmates had marched away to war, some of them never to return. The rest of us were soon to enter the military. We did not know about our future. Would we survive the war? Would there be enough of the world left when we returned? Against the certainty that I would be drafted, I joined the Air Force. Soon, I was in Santa Ana, California for pre-flight training. Okay, so a bunch of youth worried about the future because of war. Is our life over? And we all tend to do this probably from time to time. We kind of like, we come across a problem and then imagine all the different possibilities. And the possibility that disturbs us the most is the worst possible outcome, right? And so he's addressing the youth of 2011 who have this frame of mind. They're worried about the future. There's uncertainty. At the end of the talk, he says, sometimes you might be tempted, excuse me, to think as I did from time to time in my youth. The way things are going, the world's going to be over with. The end of the world is going to come before I get to where I should be. Not so. You can look forward to doing it right, getting married, having a family, seeing your children and grandchildren, and maybe even great-grandchildren. If you follow these principles, you'll be watched over and protected, and you yourself will know by the promptings of the Holy Ghost which way to go. For by the power of the Holy Ghost, you may know the truth of all things. And so people took this to mean that he was talking about the second coming and how you don't need to worry about it. Don't worry about the second coming. You can expect to have children and grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding and ignorance about the second coming, because that isn't any of our concern. The entire world doesn't get destroyed at the second coming. Okay, if everybody was killed, then yeah, I guess we could all have that worry. But if you're at least living a terrestrial law, you will move on into the millennium. Now, I don't know what percentage of the world is telestial. I personally fear that it's pretty high. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 50% or maybe more. And I have reason to believe that beyond just my own estimation. I have quotes, but we're not going to go over that now. But I'm not worried about having grandchildren or great-grandchildren. I already have children. But the second coming doesn't affect that if I'm at least living a terrestrial law. He's talking about uncertainty. This isn't a talk about the second coming. It's a talk about, you face an uncertain future. Could there be a world war during your time? And interestingly, right now, it seems like we might be entering into a world war. But he's just saying, look, live the commandments, read your patriarchal blessing, follow the promptings of the Spirit, and the Lord will guide you. You don't need to over catastrophize things in your mind. You can expect all the same blessings that everybody else has. Has nothing to do with the second coming. So anyway, let's get back to the original talk, LeGrand Richards, Signs of the Times. All right, so let's continue. And before she left, she decided that probably isn't okay. And before she left, after him telling the bucket story, she decided that probably it wasn't as cold and dreary a world after all as it might be. I said, you just go on. This is just like Boyd K. Packer's talk, this part of his talk. I said, you just go on and live right and don't lose your courage and don't think that life isn't worth it while it isn't worth living. Whether you live or whether you die or whether you are permitted to live a long life or a short life isn't going to be the thing that is going to determine the success or failure of your life. It's how you live. All right, right there. It's how you live. And if we only live right, it will not matter whether the time is short or long. We won't have to worry much about it. Okay, the next section is called Signs of the Times. As I thought about that conversation, I thought of the words of the Savior. On one occasion, the Pharisees and the Sadducees came to him, and tempting him, asked him to show them a sign from heaven. And Jesus answering said unto them, When it is evening, ye say, It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? Right? They didn't realize that this was the Messiah. They were expecting the final redemption and a political military hero. They weren't able to discern, neither just listening to him or being in his presence or seeing the miracles or the other signs, such as the sign at his birth, the Star of Bethlehem, right? They weren't able to discern those signs. It's because they had a preconception of how things would go based on their own understanding of the scriptures, not listening to the prophets. All right, continuing, and this is the part that Susan sent to me. While I was president of the Southern States Mission, one of our missionaries wrote in from Florida and said, President Richards, I've been reading about the signs of the coming of the Lord. He said, when the sun darkens and the moon ceases to give its light and the stars fall from heaven, everybody will know that he is coming. And I wrote back and said, probably they will know. The newspapers might announce some great phenomenon in the heavens, misplacement of planets that have caused this consternation, and scientists will have their explanation to make of it. And unless they have faith in the living God, unless, as Jesus said, they can read the signs of the times, they may not know anything about what is going on in the world. Now, just really quick, this is very similar to what Joseph Smith said about the sign of the Son of Man. In fact, why don't we just pull that up right now really quick? We're just going to look up the word comet, because I know that he uses that. Okay, so, yeah, here we go. Then will appear one grand sign of the Son of Man in heaven. But what will the world do? They will say it is a planet, a comet, etc. But the Son of Man will come as the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, which will be as the light of the morning cometh out of the east. And there's other versions of this, like there were different people that took down, that transcribed his discourse. But essentially he was saying that the worldly and the scientists and the seculars, they're just going to explain it away or chalk it up to some astronomical phenomena, right? Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Why I said, if the inhabitants of this earth had the ability and the power to read the signs of the times, they would know that already the Lord has given far more than the darkening of the sun, or obscuring the light of the moon, or causing the stars to fall from heaven. Now check that out. He's talking about what has already happened up until 1951. He says, if the inhabitants of the earth had the ability and the power to read the signs of the times, they would already know, they would have already seen greater signs than the sun darkening and all the rest of it. And then he continues, for what he has accomplished in the establishment of his kingdom in the earth in these latter days, and the unseen power operating in the world for the accomplishment of his purposes, are greater signs than any of these phenomena that we read about, the signs of his coming. Now, this starts to get into a different way of thinking. We've talked about people that are secular, worldly, that are not sensitive to the Spirit. But at the same time, so that's like one thing. I guess you could class them as the unbelieving. But then you do have a portion of those that believe, but they have really like very vivid, rigid preconceptions of how things are supposed to go. They read the scriptures, and there's only one way in their mind that those things can happen, and they stick to it and don't consider anything else. So let me just give you an example of that. And this is not meant to be an attack. I'm just showing you an actual example. Okay. So Jeremiah 16 verses 14 and 15. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north. So people read this and they think about the main body of the 10 lost tribes somewhere. I don't have that belief based on what I've read from Bruce R. McConkie and President Nelson and D. Todd Christofferson and others. But there is a group of people that do think there's a hidden main body somewhere. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he hath driven them, and I will bring them again into their land, which I gave unto their fathers. Okay, so they will read this. This is basically said another time in the book of Jeremiah. Let me just see if I can find that really quick. Okay, no, that wasn't it. Anyway, so they will look at this and say, look, when the 10 lost tribes come from the hollow earth or from a subterranean cave or from space or from another dimension or whatever, it's going to be so incredible. However it happens, it's going to be so mind-blowing that we're not even going to think about the Red Sea parting anymore, because that was a huge miracle. You know, the Red Sea being parted, dry ground for Israel to walk across, and, you know, just like in the Ten Commandments, like the two big walls of water supernaturally going to the sides so that this could happen. But when the 10 lost tribes come, it's going to be even more incredible than that. So we can allow our minds to think that way, and maybe that is how it will happen. To be fair, none of us were there when the Red Sea was parted. And if we were there, maybe it wouldn't look as spectacular as we imagine, like in the movie 10 Commandments with Charleston Heston. There's been a lot of different, documentaries and things about that, how that may have happened by natural means. Not that Moses didn't command it, but the Lord works through natural means, and it may not have been as supernatural looking as we suppose. And I know you'll say, well, but it swallowed up the Egyptian. Well, we don't know. We don't know exactly how it happened, but it may not have looked as spectacular as you may think. But whatever the case, so people will read this, have a preconception in their mind of what is supposed to happen. And we know that nothing like this has happened because we haven't seen a miracle as great as the parting of the Red Sea, right? Well, if we look to our living prophets and apostles, in this case apostles, but they are prophets as well. I have two quotes from David A. Bednar. This is on my this is on my spreadsheet called Quotes, 10 Lost Tribes. Okay, so this one, you can find this on YouTube, on the Church of Jesus Christ in the Philippines channel, and it's called Philippines Area-Wide Broadcast, Becoming a Temple-Ready People. And this is from, I think, last year when Elder Bednar went to the Philippines for a devotional. And this is what he said. So think of Gordon B. Hinckley in the early 1960s coming here and leaving 6 North American missionaries, and that was it. And look at here and all throughout the Philippines today. This is a miracle greater than the parting of the Red Sea. And it will continue because of the devotion, the consecration, the faithfulness of the members. Later, now this was more like in November of 2023. You can find this in Church News, November 7th, 2023. Mexico has been richly blessed, Elder Bednar says in Nationwide Devotional. This is an article by Ryan Jensen. So this is how the article reads. Quote, Elder Bednar gave us a broader vision, Cortez said after the event. And then he continues. Like he said, many of us would have loved to see the Red Sea open, but the miracle that we are seeing happen right now is perhaps even bigger than that. So this is 2 times that Elder Bednar has said that we've witnessed a miracle greater than the parting of the Red Sea, both in Mexico and in the Philippines. And those are 2 of the the largest countries in the church. Um, let's just remind ourselves. Let's see, LDS membership by country, Wikipedia. Pull that up really quick. We've done this a few times recently. Okay, let's go down here, and then we'll sort it by members. Okay, so first it goes United States with 6.8, Mexico with 1.5 million, Brazil 1.4, and then after that, Philippines at 853,000. So probably pretty soon, within the next, I don't know, maybe like 3 to 5 years, I would imagine, it's probably going to cross over the 1 million mark. But that's pretty crazy to think, because he said that it was back in the 1960s. Relatively speaking, that's not that long ago. They've gone from 0 in the 1960s to now the 4th largest country in the church, pushing 1 million. That is a pretty impressive thing to happen, and I would say that it is a miracle greater than the parting of the Red Sea. There was also, let's see, here we are, Jeffrey R. Holland. At this time, he was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is from the May 2001 Ensign, called Witnesses Unto Me. And he says in there, I testify that the worth of souls is great in the sight of God, and that saving those souls through the redeeming atonement of his beloved Son is at the very heart of his work and his glory. In pursuing that work, I testify with Jeremiah that this last great missionary declaration to modern Israel will, in the end, be a greater miracle than ancient Israel's crossing of the Red Sea. So he's talking about the missionary work that's going on, and by the time it's done. And Elder Bednar has said twice that already what's happened in Mexico, in the Philippines, is greater than the parting of the Red Sea. So this is just one example of a prophecy that we picture in our minds. It has to be some supernatural phenomena that just wows us. And then we're like, oh my gosh, that was so much more incredible than the parting of the Red Sea. No, it's the practical things. It's the things that have more worth. All these souls coming to Christ and joining his church and receiving their covenant, or entering into covenants and getting on the covenant path. So yeah, it's just, that's the thing. There's a few other things I want to read in conjunction with that. Joseph Fielding Smith, April 1966 General Conference. The words of the prophets are rapidly being fulfilled, but it is done on such natural principles that most of us fail to see it. Joel promised that the Lord would pour out his spirit upon all flesh. The sons and daughters should prophesy, old men should dream dreams, and young men should see visions. Yet the world goes on, and by the way, President Hinckley said that was fulfilled. Joel 2, verses 28 to 32, in the October 2001 General Conference, the very first talk. Joseph Fielding Smith continues, yet the world goes on about its business, paying very little heed to all the Lord has said, and to all the signs and indications that have been given. Men harden their hearts and say that Christ delayeth his coming until the end of the earth. They are eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, according to the customs of the world, not of God, without one thought that the end of wickedness is near. Pleasure and the love of the world have captured the hearts of the people. There's no time for such people to worship the Lord or give heed to his warnings. So it will continue until the day of destruction is upon them. Let's see. I'm not going to read the rest of that, but here's another one. This is President Hugh B. Brown, first counselor in the first presidency, October 1967 General Conference. A very important year. This was the conference after the 6-Day War when Israel captured Jerusalem. I want to say to you, brethren, that in the midst of all the troubles, the uncertainties, the tumult and chaos through which the world is passing, almost unnoticed by the majority of the people of the world, there has been set up a kingdom over which God the Father presides, and Jesus the Christ is the King. That kingdom is rolling forward, as I say, partly unnoticed, but it is rolling forward with a power and a force that will stop the enemy in its tracks while some of you live. Okay, 1967. There's a couple other ones from George Q. Cannon. He ended up being a member of the first presidency, although when he said this, he was in the Quorum of the 12. Let me just read a couple things that he said. I'm not going to read this entire thing. This entire discourse is about how we need to look at prophecy and what our expectations should be. He says, I will read a portion of a revelation given through the prophet Joseph Smith previous to the organization of the church, dated April 1829. Quote, Oliver Cowdery, verily, 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 I say unto you that assuredly as the Lord liveth, who is your God and your Redeemer, even so surely shall you receive a knowledge of whatsoever things ye shall ask in faith, with an honest heart, believing that you shall receive a knowledge concerning the engravings of old records, which are ancient, which contain those parts of my scripture, of which have been spoken by the manifestation of my spirit. Yea, behold, I will tell you in your mind, in your heart, by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you, and which shall dwell in your heart. Now behold, this is the spirit of revelation. Behold, this is the spirit by which Moses brought the children of Israel through the Red Sea on dry ground. Okay? This is the spirit, what we just read. Again, a lot of people will immediately go to the supernatural. He continues, the point I wish to call your attention to is contained in the second and third verses of this revelation. The Latter-day Saints are in many respects like other people who are not Latter-day Saints. We are apt to entertain views which are not very correct, and which may be the result of our traditions and preconceived ideas. This is a peculiarity that pertains to mankind generally, that whenever they deal with the things of God, or speak about them, or contemplate them, and especially when they read the predictions made by the servants of God concerning future events, or events that may transpire right before their eyes, they're apt to get sometimes erroneous ideas, or at least exaggerated ideas in relation to them. And then let's skip down. Even with this experience in the past, the Latter-day Saints themselves are not entirely divested of extravagant views respecting the effects which are likely to follow the fulfillment of predictions yet in the future. Are we not all inclined to look forward to many events which have been predicted by the servants of God as being of so great and wonderful, and may I say so supernatural a character, that when they shall be fulfilled, they will even startle us, who believe they are coming, and will compel the unbelieving inhabitants of the earth to accept them as evidences of the truth? But now I'm skipping down. But my experience has taught me that the Lord works in the midst of this people by natural means, in that the greatest events that have been spoken of by the holy prophets, okay, the greatest events. So think about the temple in Jerusalem, think about the building of New Jerusalem. We've already gone over the fact that there's a temple there that's in waiting. We also have a stake, and the original plan for the city of Zion, or the actual city of New Jerusalem, the center place, was that a stake is a city and a city is a stake. It was only going to be 15 to 20,000 people. And as far as I know, that's still the plan. And after that city is filled up, you build another city, then you build another one, then you build another one after that pattern. So temple in Jerusalem, the city of New Jerusalem, whatever, you name it, whatever, the sun going dark and the moon turning to blood and the stars falling from heaven. All these things that people say, we know that the second coming is not soon because this and this and this and this have to be accomplished, as though they know with authority how it's supposed to happen. I'm going to go with what's said here by all these different general authorities. The Lord works in the midst of this people by natural means, and the greatest events that have been spoken by the holy prophets will come along so naturally as the consequence of certain causes that unless our eyes are enlightened by the Spirit of God and the Spirit of revelation rests us, we will fail to see that these are the events predicted by the holy prophets. So you guys, when I do videos about the BYU Jerusalem Center, or the possibility that the Dome of the Rock could be converted into a temple, you may laugh at that, or you may think that that's just so silly. That's not how it's going to happen. I understand the scriptures perfectly. I know exactly the history of those places, and it could not possibly fulfill that prophecy. I would beware of that, because it may be that once it happens, we will realize, or Christ will say, that's my temple, either the BYU Jerusalem Center or the Dome of the Rock. I can't picture it being destroyed. It could be, but I feel like it'd be a lot more unifying for those that remain after the second coming. If, you have all these Muslims that also convert along with the Jews, not all the Muslims, but many of them. And it simply becomes the temple. I understand about Ezekiel's temple, and we've read about that and how that may not be the actual pattern. You can read about that in Millennial Messiah. But I'm just trying to show you that there's many different ways that things can happen that you may not realize. All right, continuing. I refer you again to that prophecy of Isaiah and Micah respecting the gathering together of Israel of God from the various nations to the earth, or to Zion. As we read of that in the Bible, we might think when that was fulfilled, it would be done with such supernatural manifestations that the people would be constrained to acknowledge it was the work of God. Yet, we see it every day. Our people are gathering, and men and women who immigrate bear testimony to the friends they leave behind in almost the exact language that the prophets said they would. And yet, it is not thought very extraordinary. Why is this? Because it has come along so naturally. And so with the great events that will take place in the future, they will come along in so natural a manner, the Lord will bring them to pass in such a way that they will not be accepted by the people, except by those who can comprehend the truth, as the fulfillment of the predictions of the prophets. It requires the Spirit of God to enable men and women to understand the things of God. It requires the Spirit of God to enable the people to comprehend the work of God and to perceive his movements and providences among the children of men. The man who is destitute of the Spirit of God cannot comprehend the work of God. A woman whose mind has not been enlightened by that Spirit cannot see or comprehend any of these events that take place in fulfillment of the prophecies of the holy prophets. I might also just point out this war that's happening in Israel. There's a lot of people that do think that this could possibly be the final war. I'm one of them. But there's other people that it's not big enough. It's not spectacular enough. There's not enough nuclear bombs going off. The entire world has to be at war. There has to be civil war all over the place, including the United States. On and on and on and on and on. But I think that we're going to look at this when it's all said and done. Like, there's probably going to be there could be a dramatic flare up, and it may be very, very fast. And then all of a sudden you have Christ coming to the Mount of Olives. But it may just be like that. Like what we're seeing right now, it may not seem very exciting because it's not officially labeled World War III, or it's just the very beginning of it. And like I said, it may kind of stay at this intensity level, then just suddenly within just like a few months, it gets really, really dramatic, or maybe not. And then, then it's going to be over. So I feel like it's wise to, instead of trying to have reality, instead of trying to confine reality to your expectations, be flexible and just accept whatever happens and just wait for it to actually happen and accept different possibilities. That it may happen in a way that you don't think, even though it seems so obvious. All right, so let's get back to this. Now he's talking about gathering of Israel. Now I want to bear my testimony. I'm sorry. I want to bear my testimony to you that I know God has set his hand to gather scattered Israel, just as Moroni told the prophet Joseph as part of this work before there was any organization of the church, before there was any priesthood or power to officiate in the name of the Lord. The angel Moroni told the prophet Joseph that quoting the words of Isaiah, the Lord should gather I'm losing my ability to read. The Lord should gather scattered Israel and bring in the dispersed of Judah and set up an ensign for the nations. Well, hasn't he done it? Look at that. Hasn't he done it? I don't know if there's anybody that would argue that point, but anyway, let us consider what has happened here in these valleys of the mountains as a part of the fulfillment of the promises the Lord has made through his prophets of old. How he should cause the waters to flow down from the high places where it has been reservoired in these mountains, how the rivers should flow in the deserts. And if you go up through Idaho and see those great canals out of that Snake River, you'll see that those canals are larger than the average rivers you see in the world, and how the waters should spring up in the dry places. When I was in Arizona recently, I saw pipes at least 20 inches in diameter running day and night, all the time, full of water. And as I saw them, I said to myself, this is what the prophets saw when the Lord declared through their mouths that he would turn the wilderness and make it to blossom as the rose. And we are living here in that day. Prophecy is being fulfilled. And then he said that he would cause the daughters of Zion to come up and sing in the heights of Zion. And where in all the world is there anything to compare with what has gone out of this tabernacle from the heights of Zion week after week after these 20 odd years as the tabernacle choir has broadcast to the world? Where would you pick a group out of any other school like this group that is here today? I'm referring to the mixed chorus of the Brigham Young University furnishing the music for this session of conference. God bless the youth of Zion. They are following in the footsteps of their parents. They love the church and they have a testimony of the divinity of it, I know, through the association with these young people, through my association with these young people. And then read the words of Isaiah where he saw the house of the Lord established in the tops of the mountains in the last days, and he saw that all nations should flow unto it. And they would say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. Has that ever happened in this world before? And if the Lord is about to come, as he has indicated that he would in these latter days, in the establishment of his kingdom, should we not have a fulfillment of these promises? And then Isaiah goes on to tell us when that time would be, because he adds, he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Ever since I was a small boy, I have thrilled every time I heard the words spoken to John upon the Isle of Patmos, when the voice from heaven said, come up hither, and I will show thee these things which must be hereafter. Then John said, I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. I've always understood that the coming of this angel with the everlasting gospel, I've always understood that the coming of this angel with the everlasting gospel, and that there can be no other, should precede the great judgments of the Lord. Signs of second coming. You'll remember when Jesus was upon the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him, and he told them how the temple should be broken down, and that there should not be one stone left upon another. Then they said, tell us when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming in the end of the world? He proceeded to tell them of the wars and destructions that should come upon the nations, and that there should be tribulations such as had not been known from the beginning of the world and should not be known until the end. Those of us who know the numbers who were killed during the last World War know that we have lived in the day when tribulations have come to this world, the like of which the world has never known from the beginning of time. That's like another big one. I feel people just discount World War I, World War II, the Cold War. Continuing, of course, we do not know just what the end is going. Okay, we do not know just what that. Of course, we do not know just what that the end is going to be, or whether we have reached that end or not. As another sign, the Savior made this statement: "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." Missionary system. A friend of mine sent me a newspaper clipping from Los Angeles the other day. It gives a report of the growth of the churches. It goes on to say, the Mormon church, devoting a great deal of effort to the missionary field, is one of the fastest growing orders in the world. Not just in the Rocky Mountains, but in the world. How could the gospel be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations before the end should come, without a system of having it preached, such as the great missionary system of this church? To me, it is one of the most marvelous things this world has ever produced. To think that the church can send missionaries by the thousands, and they don't have to be paid for long. One sister came into my office a few weeks ago for me to interview her missionary boy, and she said, "Bishop, I have a son in Switzerland. I have a daughter in the Great Lakes Mission. Here's my last boy." He was not very well clad, and I looked at her and said, "Sister, can you do it?" She replied, "I will make it some way," or "we will make it some way." That is the kind of faith that is going to carry the gospel message to every land and every clime. And that kind of faith has been in this church from the very beginning, and it will continue because it is God's work, and that unseen power that motivates it will continue to carry on. So, and that's another thing, the gospel being preached in all the world. I've done a lot of videos about that. We've looked at the internet. We've also looked at immigration, how virtually, let me just pull up the spreadsheet. It's the very first one on here, countries, where this is just from the years 2011 to 2020. Total immigrated to U.S. during those years. And here are all the countries that we currently don't have missionaries in. Okay. This black line separates the countries that do have missionaries and the ones that don't, or at least countries that have had missionaries, because some of them don't now, but there have been missionaries there before. And you see all these, you see all these numbers right here. Yemen, almost 47,000 people have immigrated just to the United States between 2011 and 2020. And who knows how many from before that time and after, right? And that's just to the United States. That's not including Canada and Europe, Australia, and other places. You have Uzbekistan, United Arab Emirates, Tunisia, Sudan, Somalia, even North Korea, 507, Morocco, okay, Guinea-Bissau, Chad, China doesn't even have missionaries, and it's going to have a total of 2 temples. As of right now, there's the Hong Kong temple, and then there's going to be the Shanghai temple. That was announced by President Nelson. So I'm pretty sure at this point, every nation, kindred, and tongue has come across the gospel. And again, I think we have preconceived notions that every single person has to have had the missionaries in their home or, been face to face with a missionary. And I don't think that that's true. And we also know that missionary work is going to continue. It's going to continue in the millennium with those that remain that are not members of our church. So anyway, we'll just end it there. So thanks again, Susan, for the email. I'm happy to have that quote along with my other ones. But that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.